Welcome to Across the Balkans. I'm Nafisa Latic. Great to have your company. As EU leaders prepare to work with US President-elect Donald Trump and his administration over the next 4 years, some leaders in the Balkans were among the first to congratulate him, viewing it as a chance to chase their interests and have closer ties with the United States. The EU is already grappling with the war in Ukraine and ethnic tensions in the Balkans, a region with strong Russian influence. Trump's approach to Ukraine could have a major effect on this part of Europe, raising questions not only about the future power dynamics, but also how different US policy in the region will be from Joe Biden's. I have a great panel with me today, but first, here's the report from Adam Amunu.
Donald Trump's been here before, but this time he made a landslide comeback to the White House beyond anything the Democrats saw coming, earning a bigger share of the vote than he did back in 2016 in nearly every part of the country. Then, he defeated the Democratic Party's first female nominee, Hillary Clinton. Now, he's done it once again, this time over their second female candidate, Kamala Harris.
We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this.
Trump crossed the line with over the necessary 270 Electoral College votes to secure the win. He also won the popular vote.
I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
The state of democracy, the shape of the economy, and abortion were the most important issues for American voters, according to the first wave of exit polls. These elections marked a shift in voting patterns, with Latino voters propelling Trump to victory.
I will govern by a simple motto: promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor. That's what it is. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try, we have to try, and it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that.
On foreign policy, Trump faces ongoing conflicts, including the war in Ukraine and Gaza, where Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is a key ally. Europe is particularly on edge due to Trump's past criticisms of NATO, especially considering that America covers the bulk of the bloc's defense spending.
NATO was busted until I came along. I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not.
And questions will be raised about his stance towards the Russia-Ukraine war.
I guess we are all waiting for just the only thing, just to stop the war, and this Trump promised to stop the war in just 1 day. We are all waiting for it. So now he is 47th president of the US, of the biggest and greatest country in the world. We are waiting for this straight move, stop the war in just 1 day. It could be today, tomorrow. We can wait till Friday. You're the president. Please, do it.
Помните, мы неоднократно говорили, что Соединенные Штаты в состоянии поспособствовать завершению этого конфликта. Это, конечно же, нельзя сделать за одну ночь, но поскольку именно Соединенные Штаты являются государством, которое разжигают и постоянно подбрасывают керосин в этот конфликт и принимают в нем непосредственное участие, то да, Соединенные Штаты способны эту траекторию своей внешней политики изменить.
The way Trump decides to proceed in Ukraine might impact the Balkans as well. The region is strongly influenced by Moscow, whose key allies are Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić and Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik, who have promised to try again to declare Republika Srpska independent of the rest of Bosnia if Trump wins. A new paper from the European Council on Foreign Relations warns that Trump could shift towards promoting Serb interests, given his close ties to Vučić.
Mi imamo dobre odnose sa Donaldom Trumpom i njegovim okruženjem. Verujem da ćemo moći bolje da se čuje glas Srbije, da će nas ti ljudi saslušati. Sa njima smo sačuvali prijateljske odnose i kada su izgubili mandat. I to je nešto povoljnija situacija za nas. Za ljude koji očekuju tektonske promene u američkom odnosu prema Srbiji, siguran sam da ih neće biti.
Over recent years, Serbia's government and Serb nationalists elsewhere in the Balkans have increased their rhetoric. They recently adopted an all-Serb declaration that seeks to overturn the post-Dayton settlement in Bosnia and claims Kosovo as an inseparable part of Serbia. For now, the world will closely follow Trump's return to the White House, where he faces a divided nation and a fractured international order. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban is one of Trump's favourite EU leaders, and he has welcomed his victory. But many in Europe are not thrilled as he is, as they worry how Trump's comeback will impact the stability of Ukraine and the Balkans, where leaders brace for possible shifts in America's policy. Adam Aminu, Across the Balkans.
Well, the United States is the most influential actor in the Balkans after the European Union, and its policy towards the region directly affects its stability. As Donald Trump declares victory, most leaders in the Balkans are hopeful for stronger U.S. involvement to solve the crises that have been going on for some time. Among them is Serbia, which has become the most pro-Trump country in Europe, as Adama mentioned in her story, and President Aleksandar Vučić was among the first to congratulate Trump. Vučić wrote on the platform X that Serbia is committed to working with the United States of America for stability, growth, and peace. While many in Kosovo fear how the Trump administration will address the Serbia and Kosovo dispute, Prime Minister Albin Kurti was also among the leaders who congratulated Trump on his win, saying he also looks forward to working with him for peace. Bosnia and Herzegovina is perceived as one of the countries that will be among the most affected by the next U.S. administration's policies, as Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik keeps repeating that he would declare independence if Trump is again in office. And the pictures that you are looking at the moment are the celebration he organized with his close aides and Serb member of the presidency, Željka Cvijanović. The video has gone viral in the region as the U.S. has expanded sanctions against Dodik's network on the same day Trump secured his second U.S. presidency. In October last year, Washington imposed sanctions against Dodik's two adult children, son Igor and daughter Gorica, and their companies, saying they facilitated the Bosnian Serb leader's ongoing corruption. The U.S. says Dodik has undermined the 1995 Dayton Peace Agreement that ended the war in Bosnia.
Pobjeda za nas, jer je pobjeda jedne Amerike koje mi vjerujemo, a to je Amerika koja će i nas razumjeti na pravi način. Ona Amerika koja je za mir. I zato smo radosni što je danas možemo da obilježimo pobjedu Donalda Trumpa, jer je on u prvom mandatu pokazao da njegovi ljudi imaju ravnotežen pristup. Mi ne tražimo nekoga da nam navija za nas u Americi, ali tražimo da bude objektivan i to je ono što vjerujemo da ćemo dobiti sa te strane.
But Croat member of Bosnia's presidency, Željko Komšić, believes Trump's new administration will be the most international partner of Bosnia and Herzegovina for strengthening political stability. And Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama also congratulated Donald Trump on his victory, saying it was a true honor to work alongside the previous Trump administration, and he now looks forward to working with the new one to enhance partnership between the two countries. A lot to discuss there. I'm joined now by Faris Kocan. He's an assistant professor and chair of international relations at the Faculty of Social Sciences at the University of Ljubljana. And Adnan Čerimagić, he's in Berlin. He's a senior analyst on the Western Balkans at the European Stability Initiative. Great to talk to both of you guys on this topic. I was really wondering your reaction to the reactions we had in the Balkans in the past couple of days. I mean, the ones celebrating the most Trump's win were Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić and Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik. Why are they, Adi, let me start with you. Why are they so optimistic? And how might this result benefit their political agendas?
Well, let me focus on Milorad Dodik in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In 2021, he tried to collapse institutional and constitutional architecture of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And those opposing him and those who not just slowed him down, but stopped his implementation of the plan were, yes, the EU, but also the US through its sanctions and through its policy, not just towards Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also in the rest of the region. So change of the administration, the return of Donald Trump for Milorad Dodik raises hopes that that kind of distraction or that kind of push against his agenda and his plans in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the wider region will be at least weaker, if not that they will not be there at all. He has access via President Vučić, but also Prime Minister Orban directly in the inner circle of Donald Trump. And he knows that Donald Trump or the Trump administration he has not been in accordance with the wider Balkan policy of the Biden administration. So he's hoping that this will be the opening for him, not just to re-implement the 2021 plan that he had on Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also that that the constraints that he's faced now with through sanctions and through political means that the US administration has imposed, that they might go away.
Right. Faris, on the same day that Trump secured his second term in the White House and Dodik celebrated his win right after, the US actually imposed sanctions on his network. This is not the first time. We already know that the sanctions have been imposed not just on him, but on his family as well, as we mentioned earlier. So why does he think this time he could get away with his secessionist talks, and why he thinks this is good news for Republika Srpska?
Yes, as Adi said already, so the pre-existing links from 2016 onwards were not there. So Dodik didn't cooperate that much with Orban. And of course, he wasn't as strategic for Vučić as he was, for example, in the previous local elections in 2023 in Serbia. So in that respect, Dodik believes that now is the time where he can maybe get some concessions or get the idea. And of course, this is one variable. And the second one is probably also because Trump fits his own, narrative and his own, autocratic style of leadership in Republika Srpska, meaning that, of course, because Trump is also, let's say, getting along with Russia, or his idea getting along with Russia is something that could also benefit Dodik of not being so much exposed towards the US in this sense. So I would say that, of course, the situation radically changed narrative-wise. Probably, even though that, of course, we now know that Trump or the Republicans have the Senate and the Congress, I would say the majority of Republicans, as we could always observe or see in the previous actions and reactions, they will not have softer stances towards geopolitics or American foreign policy. But of course, Trump can steer certain aspects. This is, as Adi already said, some kind of a boys club, boys club between Orban, between Vučić, between Dodik, and between Trump. And that's the imaginary that he's trying to grind now, so that he has a strategic ally, and that this strategic ally can also be, I would say, getting along with Russia, who is to a certain extent also trying to be perceived as his own strategic ally. So I would say that this is more on a narrative side. And of course, people in Republika Srpska are now just going to say, okay, so we have a friend now in the US.
Right. Adi, let me come to you. Can we expect Trump's administration to adopt policies similar to those of his first term? So we had like 4 years without Trump. Do you think he will have some changes in his policies? And what can, not just Bosnia and Herzegovina, what can the Balkans expect moving forward?
I think Trump administration, the second Trump administration, will not be similar to the first Trump administration. First, for the reason that he's now in more comfortable position. He has won the popular vote. He has won with a landslide, I would say. But also, he has an open path to have appointments in the U.S. administration going his way. MAGA is much more stronger today than it was in 2017, and a lot of people around him, around his inner circle, like Richard Grenell, for example, are posed to have an important role in the U.S. administration. So overall, I would expect U.S. administration under Trump's second one to be more proactive on Trump's agenda and on agenda of people close to him. In that sense, if we do really see Richard Grenell in one of the positions that can have influence on the Western Balkans, we will have more of what we have been hearing from Richard Grenell in the past 4 years under Biden. Very critical towards Kosovo, very critical towards the U.S. policy on Serbia-Kosovo relations, very critical, for example, towards the Srebrenica resolution in the UN General Assembly. And I think in that sense, we will see more of alignment with the ideas and the interests that we have in Banja Luka or Belgrade, and more of a pressure on let's say, traditional partners or those who are traditionally more aligned with the U.S. in the region. Of course, that is the U.S. segment of the Western Balkans policy. A lot will depend on how the EU and its key member states also react to Trump's return to the White House in relations to the Western Balkans.
Right, you're mentioning the EU. What everyone would like to know, I guess, in EU is how Trump will deal with the war in Ukraine, and what happens, of course, there will have a massive impact on the Balkans as well. Faris, let me come to you with that question, because we've heard from Trump earlier that he is capable, because of his relationship with Vladimir Putin, to solve this conflict. But how might this impact in general the situation in Eastern Europe and leaders close to Putin, and can this shape U.S. strategy in countering Russian influence in the Balkans as well?
Yeah, we could observe, as you already said, we could observe that he's hesitant or reluctant to send additional aid, or he believes that it's not productive in that sense. So it's going to be very interesting how he's going to pursue this policy. But of course, he said, as you said, so that he could solve that in one day. Of course, he's being a populist, but the idea is that if you want to solve this, then you have to also talk to Putin. And of course, as we've seen, so he's more focused on the economic part or getting along with Russia. So he could, to a certain extent, by revoking the idea of financial aid to Ukraine, actually make the situation in which Ukraine could at least stay outside of 1/5 of its own, territory. So that is also one of the questions and one of the core challenges that the European Union is going to face, because of course the European Union, due to different trajectories within the continent, didn't do as much as the US in Ukraine. Of course, it did a lot, but strategically, the US is key, right, to the war in Ukraine. And of course, because Trump is now trying to portray this as he's a peacemaker, that he wants to achieve world peace, he might end up, in an agreement that would, further deepen the strides within Europe. And of course, it's going to be very problematic for the European Union as well, because we have certain security pockets outside of Ukraine. We have to think about Moldova. We could also have to think about the Western Balkans. So the idea is that we would want to have a unified approach, Euro-Atlantic one, but fears are that we are not going to have it, because we know that Trump is isolationist, and he was really reluctant to get this idea of further collaboration. He was always trying to portray the idea that the European Union member states are not doing much in NATO, not spending too much.
Right. Let me go with that question to Adi. The EU will now, they have to work with Trump to keep the region stable and on the right path. Not just on Ukraine, but on several other issues that Faris just mentioned. What do you see as the main challenges in this relationship? And how do you think, these dynamics will evolve?
And if I can just follow up as well while answering on what Faris has said, I think that the biggest success of Donald Trump has been to manage to portray or to create an impression, not just in the US, but also in the EU, that it's up to the US or the West to decide whether the war will come to its closure or not. And that it's not that Putin has started the invasion, and it's not that Putin, through his efforts in Ukraine, is the one deciding to what extent and how far the war will go. So I think breaking this spell that has, went from the US also towards the EU, where there's this impression now if the West decides not to support Ukraine, the war will somehow come to an end, is going to be the biggest test, not just for the Trump administration and the US, but also for the EU in that sense, because even here in Berlin, there's a lot of political forces that have jumped to this idea that only if we don't support, things will, come to some kind of a closure much quicker. So politicians across the European Union will need to decide whether and to what extent they will support Ukrainian efforts in this interim period when we will see what Trump's strategy and what actual support of Trump will be. I think that the NATO, but also the EU, has done a bit of preparation for this scenario. They have created some of the mechanisms, some of the instruments that will allow in the transitional period to have some kind of a support for Ukraine. But I don't think we should fool ourselves thinking that everything will be okay because Trump's administration and the US is an important factor in defense of Ukraine, and we will have to see how that plays out. What I hear in Berlin here with the fall of the government, new elections, with some of the forces really going on the wagon of what Trump has also been in a populist way explaining in the US, brings me concerns that it will be very, very difficult for the EU to go its own way and do it on the time for Ukraine to really be supported in a way that it needs to be supported.
Right, challenging times ahead, indeed. Faris, there was a lot of criticism in the Balkans about how Democrats dealt with the Balkans in general, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and when it comes to Serbia, Kosovo issue. What do you think the Trump administration will do differently, having in mind that we've seen close personal links that Trump and his family have with Belgrade?
Yeah, I think, or I believe that if Granel is going to be influential, as Adi said, then probably the focus is still going to be on the Kosovo-Serbia issue. But of course, the challenge is that Democrats radically differently perceive the idea of stability, right? Because Trump is not a politician per se, or he was not socialized in this American-US foreign policy and the geopolitics and the geopolitical thought. And of course, in that respect, I would say that the Democrats preferred this stabiliocracy paradigm in the region. And they also, to a certain extent, relied upon what the European Union and how the European Union and how the UK were dealing with the Balkans. And of course, because Donald Trump is not as much invested or interested in foreign policy, I might say that the situation might go, as we already said, so through personal links, as you also said. So it's going to be visible within that boys club, and then within that boys club, certain agendas might pop out, like, as Adi said, official Belgrade, official Banja Luka narratives, and of course supported strongly by Budapest. So I would say that we should, for example, wait now who is going to be focused on the Balkans and what are going to be the ideas, because Trump is not per se interested in the Balkans. He's per se interested in the personal links, in friendships, and then via these nurturing friendships, he can also sell the stories of how he's keeping peace in not just, the Balkans, but throughout the world. And probably this is the most important idea, so that he is not a politician per se. Yeah.
Okay, well, remains to be seen if the celebrations were too early. So let's pay a close attention to that, and I'm sure you both will. And thank you so much for your insights for Across the Balkans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Across the Balkans. We'll leave you with pictures from the celebrations of Donald Trump supporters following his historic comeback. See you next time from me and the whole team here in Istanbul. Bye-bye for now.
The Fox News Decision Desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th President of the United States.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
I'm excited. I want to just rip this spike up and throw it in the air and celebrate. Everyone's so happy. He's going to make everyone happy. Drum one, drum one, drum one.